In the late 1960s, Los Angeles's most wanted man was not a bank robber. He was a street racer named Big Wille, a massive, imposing figure, 6 feet 6 inches tall, and a Vietnam veteran. His 1,000 horsepower Charger made him legend and target alike. Police scrambled to stop him. Rivals raced to dethrone him. But beneath the roar was a purpose no one saw coming. Why did a Vietnam veteran become the axis of Los Angeles street wars? And what secret mission turned the hunt for Big Wille from an outlaw chase into the city's strangest bid for peace? The answer begins with a city in flames and a myth in the making. Willie Andrew Robinson III was born in New Orleans in 1942, in a city where the rules were written by segregation and the lines between opportunity and exclusion were sharp. He stood out from the start. 6 foot 6 inches tall, built like a linebacker by his early teens, he carried a presence that made people pause. But size alone could not shield him from the realities of the Jim Crow South. As a black teenager, he watched doors close that would have swung wide for others. Louisiana State University was off limits, no matter how fast or strong he was. The color of his skin decided that. By the early 1950s, cars became Willie's escape and his obsession. He poured every spare dollar into a 1953 Oldsmobile 98, a machine that became both his pride and his sanctuary. That car was more than metal and chrome. It was freedom, a ticket to a world where horsepower mattered more than heritage. But in New Orleans, even a car could become a target. One night, as he left a gathering near campus, a group of white men surrounded his Oldsmobile. They smashed the windows, slashed the seats, and left it battered in the street. The attack was a warning, a message that no amount of speed or strength could erase the boundaries set by hate. Willie did not back down. The scars from that night ran deep, but they did not break him. Instead, they forged a stubborn resilience, a refusal to let fear dictate his future. He rebuilt what he could, but the sense of safety was gone. The city that raised him now felt like a trap. He began to look west, drawn by rumors of new beginnings in California, where the car culture was wild, the streets were open, and a man could try to outrun his past. By the time he packed his bags for Los Angeles, Willie Robinson was already larger than life, not just in stature, but in spirit. He knew what it meant to stand alone, to fight for respect when none was given. That toughness, hammered into him by years of exclusion and violence, would become his armor in a city on the edge of chaos, and the foundation for a legend who could command attention and inspire loyalty. August 1965. For 6 days, Los Angeles burned. The Watts neighborhood became the epicenter of a crisis that left 34 people dead and more than 1,000 injured. The damage reached $40 million, entire blocks reduced to cinders, and the air thick with the smell of smoke and anger. National Guard troops rolled through the streets. Helicopters circled overhead. Sirens never stopped. The city's wounds were deep and visible. Storefronts smashed, homes gutted, families displaced. The violence did not erupt without warning. Tensions between black residents and the LAPD had been simmering for years. In Watts, resentment ran hot over police brutality, job discrimination, and the feeling that City Hall had abandoned South Central. When a routine traffic stop spiraled out of control, the spark ignited a powder keg. The uprising spread from block to block, drawing in thousands. Neighbors who had watched each other's children now faced off behind barricades. gangs, already growing in strength, used the chaos to settle old scores. After the flames died down, the scars remained. The official numbers, 34 dead, more than 3,000 arrested, only hinted at the real damage. Trust between the community and the police collapsed. Businesses that had served generations vanished overnight. For many in South Los Angeles, hope felt as fragile as the broken glass littering the sidewalks. With the old order in ruins, a new kind of power stepped into the vacuum. Young men, some barely out of high school, began organizing into crews, Crips, Bloods, and dozens of other sets, each staking claim to a few blocks of territory. Violence became part of daily life. Murders, drive-by shootings, and retaliations surged. The city's leaders scrambled for answers, but their solutions, curfews, more police, new jails, only deepened the divide. In the middle of this turmoil, people searched for someone who could offer more than slogans or force. The streets needed a leader who understood both the rage and the dreams burning beneath the surface. Someone who could see the energy boiling over and imagine a way to redirect it. The urgency for change was everywhere, pulsing through every alley and avenue. The city was desperate for an alternative, a way to turn anger into something that could build rather than destroy. In 1968, Willie Robinson walked the streets of South Los Angeles with a plan that no one saw coming. Instead of choosing sides in the city's growing gang wars, he started recruiting. He went straight to the leaders of the Crips, the Bloods, the Mexican Mafia, and even biker clubs and skinhead crews. His message was simple: bring your fastest, bring your bravest, but leave your weapons at home. The only battle he wanted was on the quarter mile. He called his new alliance the Brotherhood of Street Racers. The rules were clear: race hard, respect the outcome, and settle scores on the track, not in the alley. Willie's motto spread quickly: if you're racing, you're not killing. It wasn't just a slogan. It was a new kind of law, one that cut across race, gang, and neighborhood. Anyone could join: Black, Latino, white, Asian, men, women, kids from rival schools, ex-cons, and even off-duty cops. On race nights, enemies stood shoulder to shoulder, engines idling, waiting for the flag to drop. Willie ran the Brotherhood like a general runs a unit. He organized meetings in church basements, car lots, and empty warehouses. He handed out Brotherhood jackets and patches, symbols that meant you'd agreed to the code: no fighting, no guns, just speed and respect. The Brotherhood's numbers grew by the hundreds, then the thousands. Soon, the group had chapters in every part of the city, and word spread to other states. For many, the Brotherhood was the first time they felt safe outside their own turf. The races became neutral ground. Even the most hardened gang leaders called a truce when the Brotherhood called a meet. Willie kept the peace not with threats, but with opportunity. Win respect on the asphalt, not the street corner. What started as a wild idea was proving itself. Every weekend, the Brotherhood was more than a club. It was a movement, and Willie Robinson was the force behind it, turning rivals into racers and violence into competition. Willie Robinson was used to moving in spaces where he didn't belong, but nothing compared to stepping through the doors of LAPD headquarters in 1968. The building was heavy with suspicion, a fortress built on decades of mistrust. Willie did not flinch. He asked to see Chief Ed Davis, direct, uninvited, and impossible to ignore. The city's top cop had spent months watching reports of Brotherhood races, trying to decide if this giant with a booming voice was a threat or a solution. Willie made his case with the blunt force of a man who had survived both war and the streets. He argued that the Brotherhood could keep the peace better than any badge or baton. He told Davis that if they wanted fewer bodies in the morgue, let them race, and that the Brotherhood would handle its own. The police were desperate. Gang violence was outpacing the department's manpower, and every weekend the Brotherhood's gatherings drew thousands, with no shootings. Davis listened. There was no handshake, no contract, just a silent calculation. Within weeks, the LAPD started closing off stretches of city streets in Watts, Compton, and East LA, sometimes a full mile at a time. Squad cars blocked in intersections, and officers watched from the sidelines as enemies lined up side by side, engines rumbling, waiting for the flag. For the first time, the law was not hunting Big Willie. They were working with him. Inside the department, the decision sparked outrage. Some officers called it surrender, an embarrassment for the city. Others saw the crowds, thousands of young men and women, black, Latino, white, and Asian, racing instead of fighting, and quietly admitted it was working for peace. City council members debated liability and shook their heads, but violence dropped. Brotherhood Code became the city's unofficial law on race nights. Willie knew the arrangement was fragile, held together by necessity, not trust. For now, the streets belonged to the racers. The deal gave Willie legitimacy, but it also raised the stakes. If anything went wrong, the fragile peace could shatter. For a moment, though, the city's most wanted man had turned the system to his advantage, and the hunt had changed sides. The King Daytona was more than a car. It was a legend on wheels. Willie Robinson's 1969 Dodge Charger Daytona, painted a searing orange, rumbled with a Hemi engine that racers swore pushed 1,000 horsepower. When the King Daytona rolled onto the strip, crowds parted. Rivals set aside old grudges. Even the police, who once chased Big Willie through city streets, found themselves watching in awe. The car's massive rear wing, its pointed nose, and the thunder of its exhaust became a signal. Tonight, violence would wait. The only battle allowed was measured in seconds and speed. By 1974, Willie's vision had outgrown the city's closed-off streets. He needed a home where the Brotherhood could race without fear of sirens or sudden shutdowns. With the support of Mayor Tom Bradley and the Harbor Commission, Willie and his wife Tomiko opened Brotherhood Raceway Park on Terminal Island. The track was carved from an abandoned Navy airfield, transformed into a sanctuary for anyone willing to race by the code. Tomiko, fierce and fast in her own right, stood beside Willie as co-founder and champion, earning her place at the starting line and in Brotherhood lore. Every weekend, the park drew tens of thousands. People came from every corner of Los Angeles: gang members, ex-cops, high schoolers, seasoned racers, and families with children. The strip became a place where labels and colors faded. On race days, the only thing that mattered was who could cross the finish line first. The air was thick with tire smoke and anticipation. Stories spread of rival gangs calling a truce just to settle their score on the quarter mile. Women and men, black, Latino, Asian, white, all stood shoulder to shoulder in the staging lanes, waiting for their shot at glory. Brotherhood Raceway Park was more than a track. It was a church for the city's outcasts, a proving ground where respect was earned in plain sight. Willie and Tomiko presided over it all, their marriage as much a symbol of unity as the King Daytona itself. For a decade, Terminal Island became the heart of Los Angeles car culture, a kingdom built on speed, respect, and the belief that racing could save lives. On the docks of Los Angeles, a different kind of horsepower was starting to matter. By the early 1990s, the Port of Los Angeles had become the lifeblood of the city's economy. Cargo ships lined up for miles, and every inch of Terminal Island was eyed by developers and city planners as a chance to move more containers, more coal, more money. The Brotherhood Raceway Park, once carved from a forgotten Navy airfield, now stood in the way of a billion-dollar expansion plan. Harbor Commission meetings grew tense. Port officials, backed by business leaders and shipping companies, argued that every acre of open land was too valuable to waste on what they called a hobby track. They pointed to studies showing global trade was booming. Los Angeles needed more space for cranes, warehouses, and endless rows of shipping containers. City council debates became battlegrounds. Some council members pressed for community impact reports, asking whether shutting down the raceway would send street racing back into neighborhoods. Others dismissed those concerns, insisting that the port's future and the city's tax base came first. This was a fight between economic priorities and community needs. Behind closed doors, the pressure mounted. Leases were scrutinized, and the Brotherhood's monthly rent, once seen as a symbol of partnership, was now a rounding error in the city's budget. The Harbor Commission drafted plans for demolition, citing economic necessity and the public good. The pressure from port planners and investors was relentless. For Willie and his supporters, it felt like the walls were closing in. The fate of the Brotherhood Raceway was no longer in the hands of racers or the neighborhood. It belonged to institutions, to market forces, to people who had never stood on the starting line. The threat was no longer a rival on the strip, but a machine that moved with the force of City Hall and global commerce. The countdown to demolition had begun. This time, speed and unity might not be enough. The final gambit would be decided not on the asphalt, but in council chambers and boardrooms, where money and policy carried the day. Countdown. In 1995, the bulldozers rolled onto Terminal Island before dawn. Brotherhood Raceway Park, once alive with the roar of engines and the hope of a city, was stripped down to bare concrete and dust. Fences went up. Heavy machinery crushed the grandstands and tore up the quarter-mile that had settled so many street wars. The city had made its choice. Shipping containers and coal piles now took priority over the sanctuary that had kept thousands off the streets. For the racers, the demolition was more than the loss of a track. It was the erasure of a safe haven built from decades of struggle and unity. People gathered at the chain-link perimeter, some in Brotherhood jackets, others in silence, watching as years of memories disappeared in a cloud of diesel and debris. Willie Robinson stood at the edge, powerless for the first time in his life. He had fought City Hall, the port, and the Harbor Commission, pleading for more time, more hearings, more recognition of what the track meant to South Los Angeles. But the paperwork was final. The lease was terminated. No more appeals. The city's promise of economic growth drowned out the voices asking for peace. As the last slab of asphalt was broken apart, it was clear. Brotherhood Raceway Park was gone. The place where rivals shook hands and families found common ground had been bulldozed in a single morning. The loss settled heavy on Willie's shoulders. For Los Angeles, it was the end of an era. For Big Wille, it was the shattering of a dream he had built, race by race, against impossible odds. Los Angeles still struggles with violence and division, but the echo of engines once offered uneasy peace. Today, street racing deaths in Los Angeles have doubled since 2020, while legal racing spaces vanish. The lesson endures. When the city stops listening to its outlaws, it risks losing the peacemakers hidden among them. Sometimes, the fastest way forward isn't on the streets, but in choosing who we let lead.